there's a presence. There's what I call a passing energy. The energy in the room becomes crystal clear and quite beautiful and amazing. And as the person gets closer to taking their last breath, sometimes the energy increases. Sat and held her hand, and it was such a strong vibration and energy in the room. It took me to a place, perhaps what was happening to her. She looked over my left shoulder and she just sort of pointed way over to the left there. And I can't see anything. There was somebody there, and I felt her presence. And then she closed her eyes again, and that was it.
Kia ora, hello, and welcome back to the second part of this conversation with our guest, Paul Smith. Paul is doing some amazing work helping people who are right in those final moments of life. He's been with many people as they have passed or transitioned into what follows after this world. And in part one of our conversation, Paul shares about his work. He shares about how he ended up doing this work, some of the experiences that he's had, some of the themes that he's seen with people in those final moments, some of the signs you can look for, and also some of his spiritual experiences. We're going to be continuing that conversation in this part of the episode today, but I do recommend, if you haven't listened to part one, jump on over, do that, and then come back to finish up the conversation here in part two of my conversation with Paul. Let's get into it.
Another one. This is the sort of thing that can happen right at the end of life. And this is Janie. She was someone who I befriended, and she was a nurse. And she'd found herself in hospice care, and she knew how this tended to go, but she was still fairly robust is the wrong word, but she wasn't quite ready. And she loved certain TV shows, and she had some trepidation about end of life, but she had the natural process had found its way in her. And on this one day, again, it was early afternoon. There was a little different thing about her, but still, she was tired. And I said, "You seem really sleepy. Why don't you just have a snooze and I'll come back?" She said, that sounds great, because I really want to see Jeopardy. I said, "Okay, you watch Jeopardy." And her husband was right there with us, and he'd been so great. He'd been with her almost around the clock. And so she went to sleep, and I came back a little later. What I heard during that time, her husband had left. She woke up and she said, "Please call my husband." After she woke up, she said, "I'm going to die today." Something had happened during her sleep. She'd had some revelatory experience where she woke up knowing she was going to die today. And that was nowhere on the ticket. When I left her, it was Jeopardy all the way. And her husband thought she was delusional. And he says, "Oh, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to stay at home." And he didn't come. But I came back. In fact, I was given a call that Janie was actually actively dying. Would I come back? So I did, and sat with her, and just sure enough, she was actively dying, and that evening she passed. So that's another one of those remarkable experiences. She knew it was happening all of a sudden, and she didn't know that when I left her in the afternoon.
Exactly. I wonder how often people do know. I hear of all these stories, and you look back and you think, did they know?
Yes.
The things they said, the way that they did things, they maybe prepared things, or you look back at conversations and just go, "Oh, I wonder if they knew that they were going to die."
Very often they do. Rarely as dramatic as this. In fact, that's the only time that's ever happened. But very often they say they've been talking to a past loved one, or they felt a past loved one, and they're just ready. That happens actually somewhat frequently. So there's a couple of experiences I wanted to say. There are so many. How do I pick from all these beautiful and unique people? Everyone's so unique and so important and so special.
We are so individual, aren't we?
Yeah.
in everything, in birth and death and life, and
Right.
the way we look at the world, in everything. We're so individual.
Yes.
I could sit and listen to story after story after story, because there's so much we can learn from them. I just find them fascinating, really interesting. A lot of the experiences you've been talking about, they're triggering me to think about shared death experiences. So you were saying that even though you visually hadn't joined the person who was leaving to see what they're seeing, we have a shared death experiences where people actually go and they see angels, they see deceased loved ones, they see lights and the tunnel and all of these beautiful things. Not everybody sees everything, but you're talking about how you've had these energy experiences with people who are departing, and it's just beautiful, isn't it? It's amazing.
It's life-changing every time in a new and unique way. And I'm totally open to going with them visually, to actually leaving my body. But it hasn't happened. And as a daily meditator, for years I used to say, well, I want to experience being out of my body. I want to know so I can speak with confidence to these people who I befriend without actually telling them that everything's going to be okay, you're going to leave your body. Not everybody wants to hear that, but I just wanted to know from my own personal experience, but it hasn't happened. And to the point where I stopped pursuing it now. I got very, very close a few times and then came back in, but I feel deeply. I feel like I go to the ends of the universe, but I see colors and have these incredible experiences, and I guess that's enough. That's my place. That's my space, and I know how to get there consistently, predictably, every day. And it's a place I love to be, and that's a similar sort of experience that I have with these end-of-life experiences. It takes me to that deepest zone that I go to in meditation. One of these days, perhaps they'll shock me and hold my hand and take me,
take
turn
you,
the tables. I'm happy
exactly.
to do that.
And we hear of this happening, and then they come back once they've met with the people that need to take them onwards in their journey. Yeah. Do you think that by having a strong meditation practice and connecting spiritually to your spiritual team and being very aware that we are in a physical body, do you think that enables you to connect with people right at the end of life as well? Do you think that helps in this process?
I'd say so, yes. In fact, I'd say it's the reason that I was attracted to doing this in the first place. I never felt like I lost that connection with the spiritual realm, even as a child. Although I was a typical obnoxious teenager, I've always had that feel for that connection with the sensitive side, our spiritual self, and it's definitely was a natural fit for me. I know it's not for everybody, and that's okay. Everyone's got their own space to dip their thimbleful in.
Yeah,
and this is mine.
Exactly. We've all got our thing, haven't we? And absolutely, because I know that death scares people. Some people just can't go near it, and that is okay. You know, like I want to open the conversation. I want us to break the fear down, remove the fear. Yes. But it's actually okay that we don't all embrace it, and that we don't jump headfirst into these experiences. That's okay. Really? So
it's part of the life experience to hang on, to want to hang on. And so it's a natural fit for me because I'm not afraid of death. And that doesn't mean that I could care less. I'm not arrogant about it at all. No, I realized when I had a cancer diagnosis, this is a big deal. I realized just how big of a deal that it is. And that really, really helped me to relate to the people who I befriend in hospice care. But I'm able to be okay with not being okay, if you know what I mean. Because we're starting a brand new relationship every single time. I guess the benefit of hospice care is the front's gone. The end of life zone is so organic and raw, and people's front have completely gone. Whatever you were, your title, your position, your bank account, your non-bank account, whatever, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
All that matters is, oh my gosh, I'm terminally ill. And how do I do this? And what's going to happen? And how do I die? How? All of these questions come up, and it's very, very real. And so finding a place of just meeting them exactly where they're at with no preconceptions. I don't bring any, just go to the light, you'll be fine. No, I don't presume anything. I just meet them exactly where they're at. And my okayness with being there, and sometimes with not being okay, gives them permission to be okay too, I guess.
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful space as well. We have to really honor that space. Yeah. I'd love to chat with you, Paul, about Deathbed Phenomena. So I think you said it was Yvonne who looked over your left shoulder and she could see somebody there. Yeah. And how you weren't expecting her to respond. So you'd said, hey, look, I need to pop away, but you'll be okay. And you gave her some reassuring words. Then she opened her eyes and had, like, I guess, a lucid moment.
Yes, she did. She looked at me and took me for a moment to get my heart out of my throat. And then I asked the question. Yeah. And so I sat back in my chair and she pointed way over to my left. There was no doubt she was pointing at some. And in one of the hundreds of near-death experiences I've listened to, someone did mention, I think they had a near-death experience in a hospital, and they saw people who were passing, and they said in every case there were visitors at the bedside, there were people accompanying them. So as soon as they passed, they were there for them, they were with them, and they went on their way together. I have to believe or presume that's what I feel. Someone is there present. And I say it happens to all of us.
I believe so. I don't believe personally that we're alone at the moment of death. We may be physically alone, that nobody's in the room with us in this realm. But I don't believe, unless we particularly want it to be this way, I believe we have loved ones with us. So I've heard many, many stories, because I'm always looking into these things and looking for first-hand accounts and stories that have people often talk about past loved ones being there, or people being there in perhaps Victorian style clothing or old-fashioned clothing. I've heard accounts of people on a horse and carriage going through the room, which, makes no sense at all. And so I often wonder how that happens. But when you said about Yvonne, I thought, oh, hang on a minute, she's seeing somebody there, because it is very, very common. So you said that it only happened once to you.
As specific as that, but I've noticed people talking to someone who's not apparently there. They're not actively dying, because we're not talking then, and they're not even transitioning, but they're getting close, and they appear to be talking to someone or noticing someone. I've seen people looking around the room as if they're seeing something that I'm not seeing. That's not unusual. That's not unusual.
And I guess a really important part of this is to let it flow, just go with it, to allow it to happen rather than shutting them down. Don't be silly, there's nobody in the room, it's just us, because that achieves nothing. But also, we have no clue what's happening in these in-between fragments of this world, things that we can't see in the spiritual realm. They could be seeing absolutely anything. And often people are trying to talk to them. They're trying to reach out. You hear of people raising their arms. People, it looks like they're bathing in a ray of light or something like that.
Absolutely. That's frequent occurrences. And honestly, in hospice care, you're not likely to find anyone who would shut that down. All the people I know in a hospice house anyway are just so open to that experience. We kind of expect it, to be honest. So we don't interrupt it. We don't talk it up. We just accept it. Oh yeah, someone's here. We just be with them where they're at. It's always about where they're at and being open to what they're going through. And we're literally just there to help them in their journey. So we know, what right do we have to say anything contrary to what they're experiencing?
Exactly.
Unless they ask us.
What does it prove? it's not a matter of right or wrong, because who cares if they're going to transition, if they're going to end up leaving anyway. What does it achieve if we try and counteract what they're saying or question them?
No, we wouldn't. No, we're all probably a little bit fascinated with that edge of the known and the unknown. So we probably more, if anything, like, oh, tell me more. What's going on?
Yeah, what do you see? Who's there? Exactly. Are there any experiences which come to mind for you, Paul, which have really impacted you within your beliefs or within your life? An experience where you're like, wow, that was a defining moment for me.
But every time, every relationship, there have been some more profound than others, I'd have to say. There was a young man who I befriended, and he had a very, very difficult life from what's the condition he was born with? I forget the name. He wasn't supposed to leave hospital. He had a very, very difficult condition, which meant he couldn't control his muscles, and begins with C. I'm blanking now because you all want me to come up with the name, and I can't. I'm sorry.
No, I'm blanking too.
But cerebral palsy.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. But he lived his life in daily excruciating pain, and it was had all kinds of other conditions as well. Couldn't eat anything, couldn't hold food down. He would want to bring it back up. He was legally blind, had excruciating headaches. The way that I knew that he was or his family knew, and they taught me that when he was in excruciating pain, he would laugh. Pain had become just another sensation to him. And he had so many surgeries, they couldn't have any more surgeries. I was with him for 2 years. His body was still quite strong.
Wow,
and he took over a week in his actively dying process. And it was just an incredible experience where the family came together from all parts of the country. It was a big family. And there's a lot of healing took place at that time. And he did finally pass after a week or so. And then maybe a couple of years later, I had a really vivid dream. Now, there's dreams and there's visitations when you know you've been in the presence. And this was one of those electrifying experiences where I know I met him. And it was really made me laugh, because one of the first things he said to me, I said, Clive, how are you doing? And he laughed in his own unique way. He says, hi, Paul, I'm doing great. I'm eating everything in sight. And that was hilarious, because he couldn't eat anything, and he was always hungry, and he tried to eat and couldn't. And he just had this enormous grin. And I'm eating everything in sight. And it was a beautiful moment. And we just leant on this fence. I don't know where the fence came from, but we leant on it and we just chatted. And I so just said, how are you? And the ultimate message, I can't remember all of the conversation, but he just wanted me to let his parents know that he was okay. His parents were amazing. They cared for him 24/7 for the entire 19 years.
Wow.
And, their challenge is how to live now that he's gone, because they devoted their life to him in such a beautiful, unique way.
Yeah.
He wanted me to let them know that he's good. And he's experiencing a whole new awakening and awareness. He's no longer restricted. He's no longer in pain. And he can do what he wants. And he was enjoying it. It was amazing. And so how has it affected me? Oh, no one way. I wish I could say there was just one thing. But, I've been through all sorts of paths myself, from an early meditator through Orthodox religion to now being a little bit religion phobic, to be honest. I've been in everything along the way. I'm just I'm just into life, and by that I mean everything that life is, the other side and this. I don't really differentiate that much between the other side and here. We are who we are and where we're at. And right now, I'm here in this physical life experiences, and I enjoy and love every day. And when I pass, I'll be me in this new existence, making sense of it all. And in my perspective, continuing on relationships and just enjoying the heck out of it and discussing this life experience. So no one experience, but every time is a new life-changing experience. That's it, which enables me to give a little more for the next person. The next person that might begin our conversation saying, I'm so afraid. That's when I immediately feel such a heart connection and feel such compassion. And that's where I know I'm meant to be.
Yeah.
That's why I know I'm meant to be in this work, because it was natural for me. The very second person, actually, I was ever introduced to in hospice was all those years ago, was Maxine. She was only in her 50s. At that point, I was going to people's houses. So that was a little bit, you sort of have a bit of intrepidation. You're knocking on the door on someone who is dying, and you think, oh my gosh, they're dying. I'm not supposed to be here, am I?
I can relate to that part.
She opened the door, and the first thing she said to me after I said, hello, I'm Paul, I'm from Mission Hospice, I'm Maxine, I'm so afraid to die.
Wow.
I thought, wow, here I am, right? This is where I knew I belonged. Because she brought me in, we closed the front door, I took her hand, we went to the couch, we sat down, and we just talked about it. And I didn't know what to say, but I did know what to say, if you know what I mean. And less is more. Mostly it's about listening.
Yeah.
And then as we listen, we get to the real point, the central point of what the fear is. And it's always the unknown that we talk up to ourselves. And there was a religious background for Maxine. So it has helped me to question and to discover my own beliefs, which are non-specific these days. Just that we are and that we continue.
That's beautiful, Paul. I love that we are and that we continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told you the first question. Any more questions? You're going to have to just turn this thing off and shut me in mid-sentence.
Oh, that's okay. I have a little bit of trouble as well, because I could sit here for, 110 hours and just chat with you. And it is just all so interesting. I guess, I don't know. I just feel so much gratitude for your life, Paul. I feel so, I don't know, my heart is just, I can't even put it into words. I'm just so grateful that you are here and doing the work that you're doing. And I can see the impact. I could hear just the rawness of it all. It's a very, very difficult thing. It's a very rewarding thing, but a very, very difficult thing to be with someone who is dying. And, we haven't even talked about attachment and getting hurt when people die and things like that.
There are three questions I get asked most frequently. The first one is, how did you get into this? The second one is, don't you get attached? Which you just mentioned. And the answer is, yeah. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I get really attached, but I enter into this knowing that may be, and it's part of it, and I welcome it. I'm opening my heart, and they're opening their heart, and that's what we do in hospice care. And sometimes, especially if I just miss them when they're passing, or it happens after I just left, whatever the reason is, there's very often it takes me a few days, but we recover, and we recover stronger and broader and more able to bring a little more to the next person. So yes, they do get attached, and that's okay. The third most commonly asked question is, don't you find this depressing?
I get asked that too. Yeah.
Well, that's because of the misconception around death in society in general. The easy answer for that is no, never. Nothing at all depressing about this. It's deeply profound, moving, life-changing, awakening, beautiful, connecting, extraordinary. Never depressing. In fact, people are usually very surprised when they come to the hospice house. Their loved ones, relatives, friends who come to visit friends who are staying with us in the house are surprised by what a happy place it is. Everyone is happy. It's a light, open, energetic place with great respect and reverence for life, but never depressing. So it's usually a life-changing experience for all those who come to go with their loved one who's passing.
And I think it's really important to acknowledge, you were talking about attachment, talking about how you might just miss somebody, they'll die right after you've left them, or you build a relationship with them. Combining that with not quite the grief, but, you would feel the loss as well. And I think it's really important to acknowledge both ends of that spectrum, that it isn't all happy. So do we find it depressing or morbid? No. But it doesn't mean that there aren't other emotions that are connected in there. It doesn't mean that it's particularly easy. It's quite an emotional journey, isn't it, to work with people like this?
Yeah, and I know that's likely coming when I make that initial connection. And I, as I said, I always know within the first few moments of meeting someone if we have that connection, and I know it's going to be one of those, and that's all right. I welcome it.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah. That is beautiful. Paul Smith, thank you so much. Like I said, I could listen to your stories for 110 hours. This is amazing. They're just so real. I love getting firsthand accounts. I love hearing the experiences that you've had. So thank you for sharing them. Thank you for the work that you do. And I really greatly appreciate you sharing your journey with us today. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help me to be able to get more episodes out into the world. There's also the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page. And if you wish to share your experience with me firsthand, you can always get in touch via Kirsty at letstalkneardeath.com.